Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, February 24, 2026. Time in Texas about 10 a.m. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share. Some of the sources I'll use today: God in the Bible, Patriot subscribers, Stephen Gardner, RIVIERA, Maya News, Hal Turner, BREITBART, TOUSITV Plus. Some of the things we'll cover: snow bomb, and the U.S. military rescue American citizens from Mexico. President Trump formed a task force in January that we see paying off today in Mexico against the cartels, who are aided and abetted by Iran and the IRGC. Iran has plans to take over America from Mexico, I believe. And it's coming out, as I've put out for years, Iran already has nukes. And what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, and the Epstein tie to China. So let's get started. So from Ryan Hall, y'all, we know we had a snow genesis storm in the East Coast yesterday, primarily New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, plus. And what's going on there? About 1 million people without electricity and these freezing temperatures. And we had in New York City, New Jersey, and Long Island, 2 feet of snow. 3 feet of snow in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And yesterday we had 600,000 without power. I believe that's gone up slightly. And we have thousands of flights canceled. And this was being described yesterday by the governor of New York as a once-in-150-year storm. We do not have any figures yet on the number of dead or injured by the storm. But we do have coming later this week more storms. We have another Arctic front coming down from Canada that will reach down to the U.S. southern coast, Louisiana on. So that's coming later this week, where the temperatures will be below freezing, beginning about today on. And with the wind chill, it will feel like it's in the teens. We also have, along the west coast, atmospheric rivers leading to flooding. So we're being pummeled, and many sources, as I've been putting out, I believe this is because the earth has tilted approximately 150 miles to the north. So the earth tilted. That means that the U.S. will be in a colder latitude. So that's going on. And we have this from ADAPT 2030. There are also blizzards, and a blizzard is heavy snow with high winds on a global basis, currently occurring in Hungary, Bulgaria. And we have the U.S. West Coast in a virtual whiteout, breaking records for snowfall. Russia is also experiencing whiteouts in some of its areas. So we see, if the earth tilted, we would see changes in the jet streams, and we would see changes in weather patterns on a global basis. We have this coming out. So Mexico. So we have from TOUSITV, and I will put out President Trump gives his State of the Union message tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 8 o'clock in Texas. I'm really going to make sure I watch that. So we have now coming out from TOUSITV and other sources ties between the Mexican cartels and the Iran IRGC. And the Iran IRGC has infiltrated inside Mexico and inside the U.S. It's widely believed by multiple analysts that there are sleeper cells both in Mexico and in the U.S. President Trump last month in January set up a joint task force to counter the cartels, and already in February we're seeing results because President Trump is also aware that there are terrorists from Iran in Mexico and in the U.S. who are just waiting for the go signal, and that these terrorists from Iran are working with the cartels. So that's going on. And we have this. Yeah, so Sunday we saw the U.S. Instrumental in the takedown of El Mencho, the leader of the CJNG cartel. We understand also a large cartel group inside Mexico, the Sinaloa, are currently in civil war. And then we saw that hit by the U.S. and Mexico military on the CJNG cartel Sunday. So we have this today, Monday. Cartels are opening fire on civilians because the deadline has run out for the Mexican government and military to surrender to the cartels. We also have information that the Mexican military has regained control of Puerto Vallarta and most of Jalisco. Tuesday, today, the cartels are now attacking in Mexico City, the presidential palace. But we understand Sunday or Monday, President Claudia Sheinbaum left Mexico and is in safekeeping in the oceans on a Mexican Navy ship. We have from PGURUS that ISIS is in Mexico. Yes, there are many Middle East terrorist groups in Mexico, and I submit they have sleeper cells inside the U.S. right now. So we have multiple sources validating what's widely been known by many sources for years. We have this in Mexico, Pastor Paul Begley, that we have violence going on in Mexico after the cartel leader El Mencho was killed. We have the cartels executing people by hanging them, civilians. 73 dead so far. This was yesterday. And we have no flights leaving Mexico. And we have Mexico, the cartels are also went to a prison yesterday and let out 23 of their cartel members from a Mexican prison. So that's going on. And we have this. Sunday, after El Mencho was killed, Texas orders the DPS to the Texas border. We do expect spillover into the U.S. HYPERSPEED brings out that the Mexican Navy and the U.S. Navy hit a cartel lab, a $1 billion underground lab operated by Sinaloa. That's been taken out. and the U.S. military used F-15s loaded with 24 bombs. And we have this. Yeah, so that Operation Sunday, where El Mencho was taken down, we're now finding out involved intel from the U.S. military, CIA, and DEA, along with the Mexican military. Sheinbaum knew about the operation, but she had been warned by President Trump not to tell anyone in her cabinet, and that's because the Mexican government Secretary of Defense was being paid by the cartel to protect El Mencho. So her cabinet did not know about the hit to come. We had also information that the U.S. Navy went in February 15 to train Mexican special forces who would make the hit. And during this time, they did not allow the Mexican special forces to have cell phones or other communication devices so that secrecy could be maintained. The training was done in Campeche. And we have this. Yeah, secrecy was maintained. From Riviera Maya News, from the QUAYLE aggregate site. So the Mexican government in February, at the prompting of President Trump, had to vote to allow in foreign troops, that would be Navy Special Forces, Navy SEAL Team 2, who came in to train the Mexican Special Forces for this hit. 19 U.S. SEALs came in to train the Mexican Special Forces and the Mexican Navy. This the training began on February 15 when the Mexican Special Forces were placed in a type of lockdown situation. No cell phones, no communication devices. We have this, that President Trump in January put in place a task force to deal with the cartels, and that prior to the El Mencho hit on Sunday, the Mexican government released to the U.S. 92 cartel leaders for whom the DOJ had arrest warrants. That's because they'd been operating inside the U.S. to bring in drugs and trafficking and so on. And the DOJ engaged in extradition with the government of Mexico. So on Sunday, or late Saturday, the U.S. went in, the U.S. military, picked up the 92 cartel leaders and brought them back to the U.S. They will stand trial in the U.S. So that's going on. And we have this, that the CIA, the U.S. military, Pentagon, CIA, and DEA also worked with the Mexican military to provide intel about El Mencho and the location of his romantic partner, who is unnamed so far, with whom he has had a relationship for about 4 years. That's how they were able to locate him. Plus, they had in place, Sheinbaum didn't tell the cabinet, which didn't alert the Secretary of Defense to warn El Mencho. Plus, secrecy was maintained with the Mexican Special Forces who were being trained by the U.S. Special Forces. In January, this is a result of President Trump's task force in January, the joint interagency task force to counter cartels. President Trump recently was made aware of the ties with the Iran, IRGC, and ISIS operating inside Mexico and the U.S. via the cartels. And we have this from BREITBART. Scheinbaum 100% was compelled by President Trump to allow the hit. We have from Real Raw News. The U.S. military on Sunday went in to rescue American citizens in Puerto Vallarta at a Marriott and were able to successfully pick up many U.S. citizens. So that went on. And we have this. Yeah, the U.S. military has rescued U.S. citizens. They operated out of a U.S. military base, Fort Bliss, located in Texas. They came in with Black Hawks and Apache gunships. They picked up American citizens in Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. So that's going on. We have Iran. So we have the U.S. Military is evacuating a second base in Syria. So I put out in the last 2 weeks or so that the U.S. military had moved U.S. military out of Syria. Syria had 2 U.S. bases. The second U.S. base located in northern Syria was evac'd within the past 24 hours. We have this going on at the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon, that the U.S. is emergency evacuating family members and non-essential embassy employees from the embassy in Lebanon. It's expected that a simultaneous hit, when the U.S. goes in to hit Iran, Israel will go in to hit Lebanon. We have the U.S. military out of northern Syria. That happened yesterday, February 23. Another U.S. military base had been evacuated in Syria 2 weeks ago. We have this. Yeah, okay, so I've put out for years that I believed Iran had nukes. It wasn't logical to believe that they didn't have nukes. 1989, when the Soviet Union fell, you could buy Soviet Union nukes on the black market. And years ago, Mike from around the world said Iran had access to deep underground areas that were natural. They weren't man-made, large underground caverns, 1 to 2 miles deep. An ideal place to keep nukes, where nuke sniffers are unlikely to be able to detect them. So now we have coming out from Iran a statement by the chief of the Iranian army that Hamir Hadan, I believe is his name, that if the U.S. hits Iran, Iran will use its nukes. So that's going on. And we have this. Yesterday, February 23, inside Iran, another resistance attack was made on a power station in Iran. There was also televised yesterday a message from Reza Pahlavi to the people of Iran when U.S. cybersecurity took over control of the cell phones inside Iran. And the U.S. also gave out a message to the Iranian people via the cyber takeover. And the message, Reza Pahlavi, an exiled Iranian who is believed to be the pick by the U.S. government to head up the transition government in Iran once a regime change takes place. Yeah. And so we have that going on. And we have this. Also, information was published by the Israeli news media N12 on an interview or information coming from a member of the Saudi Arabia royal family that indicated Saudi Arabia favors regime change in Iran, and that the Ayatollah needs to go. We have this. Yeah. Iran Army Chief Major General Amir Habami says if Iran is hit, Iran will respond. He says Iran will do its first nuke capabilities test. Shut up, Major General. We've been hearing for the past 2 years about incidents of moderate earthquakes inside Iran, like a 4 or 4.5 or so. Widely viewed as indicating that Iran was testing something, missiles or nukes. So that's going on. And we have this. We have from Hal Turner's Intel. So we have today, February 24, we have Raptors F-22s taking off from the UK Lakenheath base, located in Suffolk, England, heading for the Middle East. This began this morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have this. Yesterday, February 23, we had 8 plus C-17 cargo planes going from the U.S. to the Middle East. We have also F-16s on Diego Garcia, also moving toward other locations in the Middle East. We have this from Sequel's aggregate site, Just the News. The U.S. State Department is evacuating non-essential people and families from the embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, according to Fox News. We have this from DURAN. What's going on with Russia and Ukraine? Ukraine is in a panic. And we have Europe. Okay. So now the not president of Ukraine, Zelensky, has told the European Union he wants to continue war in Ukraine for 3 more years. The idiot apparently believes in 3 years that there would be a new president in the U.S. Apparently he's being told it'll be a commie Dem. Well, I got news for you, Zelensky. The majority of the American people are awake. A commie Dem will not be elected. And we see what's going on in the U.S., where the majority of the American citizens know that the U.S. presidential election of 2020 was a coup. And now American citizens are demanding that our elections be safeguarded. A commie Dem will not help you in 3 years. And besides that, God, the American people, and President Trump are going to end the unnecessary war in Ukraine. So shut up, Zelensky. And we have this. UK, a deep state operated government, headed up currently by Keir Starmer, who has demonstrated that he is a traitor to both the US and the UK. The UK wants to push hard to keep that war going in Ukraine because the dirty, filthy politicians line their pockets, and they do not care how many citizens of Ukraine or Russia or other nations are killed. The dirty... All right. And we have this. So, last week, the Zelensky, the not president of Ukraine, because his presidential term actually ended, I believe, in May of 2024, 2025. And, of course, he said no elections in Ukraine. The not President Zelensky then cut off Russian oil that was flowing through a pipeline in Ukraine to Hungary and Slovakia, which constituted 100% of Slovakian oil and 86% of oil to Hungary. Then we've been seeing Russia blowing up energy infrastructure in Ukraine. So then Slovakia and Hungary have been providing to Ukraine emergency electrical power. So they said to Zelensky, turn that oil back on or we're going to cut power. So, and the deadline was yesterday, Monday. Zelensky, who doesn't care about the people of Ukraine nor Europe, didn't turn it on. So now the emergency electrical power to Ukraine is being cut by Slovakia and Hungary. And also Slovakia and Hungary and the EU are voting against more money and weapons to Ukraine. So that's going on. And now we have this, that we have, what is now the tie between Epstein and China? We see Xi on a very hot seat now, surrounded by both pushback by the CCP and the Chinese military. Well, it turns out that Epstein, this would have been... we know Nixon was the one to open trade to China. So sometime after that, Epstein came in. Epstein was a deep stater. Many believe put in place by the CIA and Mossad. But he had contacts globally. This was through the deep state. And he coached U.S. banks, J.P. Morgan, Citibank, and other major banks in the U.S., how to do business with China, the 12 ruling families of China. So then the U.S. banks could operate as laundering the cash that the 12 ruling families of China consistently steal out of China. So that's been going on, and this is coming forth via an outlet, China in Focus, and other Chinese experts, that Xi was put in place by the deep state via the U.S. banks and Epstein, and that Xi could be taken out through the same route. So that's going on. And we have this. We have that, yeah. All right. So information, we know in the U.S. Congress, the SAVE Act is being put forth that requires an ID to vote, as all other nations in the world do. It's only the commie Dems who don't want that because, hey, why do you think they brought in, during the JB tenure, almost up to 20 million illegals brought in by the commie Dems? Because the American citizens won't vote for Dems. So they brought in the illegals to vote. Therefore, the Dems don't want voter ID. So that's going on. So we have that. To tap down foreign interference in U.S. elections. And we have that, yes, and that had been substantiated, this information, which is once again coming out, that in 2020, China sent in hundreds of thousands of fake IDs, driver's license, into the U.S. for the illegals to use so they could vote in the 2020 presidential election. But now, but the question with the DOJ is, who gave China the names to put on the fake driver's license? Expect a lot more government fallout in the U.S. in the upcoming months. Expect President Trump to remain strong to protect America from the deep state, Iran, the Mexican cartels and other cartels. That's what's going on now, because Iran and the cartels present right now a clear and present danger for the people of America. Isn't it good that we have a president who's strong enough to stand up against the deep state to protect America? So it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.